Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a counterterrorism expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the motives of Charlie Kirk's assassin. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, let's go. I want to make sure everybody knows I'm not showing any graphic footage today. I think it was shocking the amount of graphic footage everybody was exposed to the day of the assassination. For anybody that was on X or anywhere else, they may have actually seen precisely what happened. I know I did, and I wasn't looking for it. What we're going to be looking at today are the motives of Charlie Kirk's assassin. Now, this picture you see right here, this was released by the FBI as a person of interest. This is a suspect. This person has not been charged yet. By the time this video is released, they may have caught the individual. Maybe they'll find somebody else. But as of right now, this is the individual they're looking for. We're going to be talking about the motive of why somebody did this. We're also going to be talking about how I believe this person was influenced. And if they haven't caught them yet, I have some thoughts about ways they might, in fact, be able to identify who this is. Now, to understand the motivation of the person who killed Charlie Kirk, you have to understand what terrorism is. Now, while I don't talk about this on this channel very often because oftentimes it's not relevant, I am also a counterterrorism expert. I have a degree in counterterrorism, and I was part of a counterterrorism program 12 years ago that was run by current and former U.S. intelligence. So first, let's define terrorism so you can understand why this falls under that purview. This isn't just some random crazy person. There's more to it than that. Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence against persons or property to influence individuals, governments, and to further a political or social agenda. So terrorism isn't just about the death of the person who is assassinated or who is killed. It's to send a message. It's to cause a chilling effect. It's to cause a change in society. And unfortunately, that, I believe, is the primary motivation of the person who assassinated Charlie Kirk. But specifically, what do they want to change? Well, first off, let's look at who Charlie Kirk is and what he does. So for those of you unfamiliar with Charlie Kirk, he was a conservative influencer and commentator and also a close ally of President Trump. And what he would do is he would travel around to different universities and debate students. It was all exclusively debate. Sometimes they would talk about topics that were extremely controversial, very hot topics that would lead to some pretty intense emotions at times, but it was never more than debate. Charlie Kirk, as far as I know, has never advocated for any type of violence or anything like that. And so if we're wondering what was the purpose of this assassination, why did this individual do this? Well, first, you have to understand the influence of this individual, Luigi Mangione. Luigi Mangione may have had the single most negative influence on individuals like the person who assassinated Charlie Kirk of anybody in recent U.S. history. And as most of us know at this point, Luigi Mangione assassinated the CEO of an insurance company. He wrote messages on the bullets. It was very specifically political. That absolutely was an act of terrorism. And the goal of terrorists is to influence other people to do the same. You don't even have to officially be part of a movement, just influenced by it. That is part of the goal of terrorism, is that if other people see this and are excited by it and influenced by it, then they'll go do the same thing. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. Think about everything you've seen about Luigi Mangione since it happened. There are so many people that support what he did. And unfortunately, there's a combination of him being a good-looking individual, in addition to the fact that he murdered somebody that apparently a lot of people don't have much sympathy for. So it created this wellspring of support for Luigi Mangione, people that would not condemn what he did. And that's influencing other people to go, I want to be just like that. I want to be thought of just like that. We've seen this in other parts of the world. We've seen less of that at home. A big part of my counterterrorism training was actually about domestic terrorism, which looked totally different back then than it does now. And this absolutely is domestic terrorism. So what's the goal of assassinating Charlie Kirk? Well, there's really two reasons this individual did this. One, it's to silence, and two, it's to radicalize. That really is typically what we see with most terroristic acts, and it's very clear here. First of all, the idea is there's certain things that you can't say in public. You're not allowed to talk about things that this individual disagrees with, things that go against their values. We're going to explain why they feel justified to have done this. And if you talk about these things on a public forum, and if you're someone who has a big following, you may be at risk. I think that's the message out there. The other would be radicalization. Think about what we saw, assuming you watched some of the follow-up to this. There was somebody in the audience who was cheering after it happened. He looked back at probably around where the shooter was and was raising his fists, looked really excited and really happy about having just watched Charlie Kirk get assassinated. Unfortunately, I spent too much time on social media after this happened because I was curious about what kind of reactions we were getting. And there was no shortage of people that seemed elated. at the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There seemed people that were very, very excited about it, and had no problem telling everybody how happy they were that it had happened. I saw dozens. I'm sure there were many, many more videos of people. So it's not just bots, videos of people recording themselves, showing how excited they were. No shortage of people that already have been radicalized. And that's what's so scary about this. It's not like it happened and people were civil and just it found a way to bring us together. That unfortunately doesn't seem to be what's happening, which means these terroristic acts are working. So why is it that not just this individual, but other people are starting to get radicalized? And it's because they've been convinced that they are victims. That's a very common trait with terrorists. They try to convince people there is an oppressor and that they are justified in doing what they're doing, that there is no other way to get what it is that they're looking for. This is certainly not the first time we've seen something like this, but in the age of social media, it's starting to look different than it ever has before. Terrorists years ago were using social media to recruit, and that's essentially what this individual is doing. Now, are they doing it in an organized way like you might see in other countries? No, this is not organized in that sense, but it doesn't change the fact that it can have people gravitate towards a general cause, which in some ways is more dangerous because then you have lone wolf actors like this. And that's what's scarier. When you have a whole organization, it becomes a little bit different. It's easier to identify these people. It's easier to figure out or to infiltrate these kinds of individuals. When it's lone wolf actors like this, that makes it infinitely more difficult. Now, I talked earlier about how they could catch this individual. Now, they may have already caught him by the time this video comes out. That's just sort of the way the internet works. By the time I'm done editing it, they may have already got the guy. But I at least want to throw this out there because if nothing else, this can help prove who he was, where he was, and maybe could help with the prosecution of him, if nothing else. But I want you to think about the fact that he was 200 yards away. This individual essentially sniped Charlie Kirk from 200 yards away. At the time, he was talking about trans individuals and mass shootings. At least that's my understanding. That's what was reported. If that's in fact true, and if information released by the FBI that there were bullet casings with pro-trans, anti-fascist markings on them, which is once again similar to Luigi Mangione, if that is also in fact true, and this was timed intentionally, that means he had to have heard what was being said. Now, at 200 yards away on the building he was on, there's no way that he could have just heard that out loud through a PA or anything like that. This means that he probably was streaming it so that he could time it the way he wanted to. He would have been watching it live. Now, I would suspect that nobody else in the entire campus would have any reason to be watching it live because they were physically there watching it. So if you could find the one person who had a cell phone tower ping that was in fact streaming that, you're very likely to be able to find who the shooter is. You're very likely to be able to prove exactly where they were because nobody else around there should have been streaming that because they'd have no reason to. But he would have needed to if he was trying to time that shot to go along, to coincide with a specific topic. All right, let's go ahead and wrap things up. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of why this happened. Now, I understand this has been a really, really heavy week for a lot of people. If you've been watching the news, you've probably gotten exposed to things that you didn't want to see. I know that I certainly wasn't expecting to see some of what came up on my feed, and it was very graphic. The unexpected nature of things popping up on your feed, seeing things you don't want to see, that adds to trauma. So I would encourage anybody that is struggling with this to talk to somebody. If you have somebody you can talk to, have someone you can rely on, to just talk about how you feel about these things. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. If you have any other thoughts about this or if there's anything else you want me to analyze, please let me know in the comments below. Last thing before we get finished up is I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. All right, thanks for watching.